Hello, Trev here. I'm just going to do a video on restringing a classical guitar. So this is a nylon string, 3/4 size guitar, very similar to one that you might start on or the kids that I teach use. And you can see it's got nylon strings. So these are kind of, I think of them a bit more plasticky than steel string metal guitars. So classical guitarists will often play with their fingers more, so it's a little bit softer. So you can also see that this has got some stickers on, so someone who's learning guitar might have some stickers just to kind of help them navigate the notes and stuff. So first of all, we need to take the strings off. So there's a couple of things just to mention about when you might restring your guitar. So you might do it if you snap a string or if a string gets old. You also probably should replace your strings maybe every year. Some people, if they play the guitar a lot, would do it more often than that, maybe every 6 months. If you leave them more than a year, they will start corroding a bit. You can kind of see here possibly the kind of like the little kind of corrosion on some of those strings. It's not too bad, and I did a video on restringing an electric guitar, but classical nylon strings are very different in how they're attached, particularly around the bridge. Okay, so you can see here they're sort of wound around, and a little knot is tied, and then the kind of the tuning pegs, the machine heads at the other side, are also wound differently. So it's a different instrument, it's a sort of different process, so I'll show you how to do that. Actually, I need to just share with some tools that you might need. So I use fast fret, but you might want to get something similar to fast fret for cleaning, and fast fret's a little bit oily, and it comes with a little dabber that you can kind of clean the fretboard. You can do it when the strings are on as well, but it's nice to do that. And a little cloth. You can obviously just use a normal cloth. This a kind of a machine winder for doing the tuning pegs is very helpful. You don't need it per se, but it does help, as you will see. And also not so much for the nylon strings, but wire cutters. I like using these. You could just use scissors probably for nylon string guitar. Okay, so assuming that you're wanting to put new strings on, or you've got a snap string, then let's take these strings off. So first of all, I'll do the winding method. So if you're taking a string off, you could wind down until it gets looser. You can hear getting really loose, and once it's loose, you can probably sort of unthread it a little bit over here, and then it sort of clips out, a bit fiddly. There you go, we've got a string out, and then on the other end it should just unthread. Like so, a bit like a shoelace. So there you go, you've got our E string. You can see that that's fat, and it's sort of metal, it's nylon string with metal wound around it, so that's what holds the sort of lower tension. Let's do another one. I'm inclined to just cut them, because sometimes I just cut them, but let's just show you how you might do that. So the beauty of this device is it just means that you can kind of do it quicker, and it also saves the mechanism on the machine heads, but you can also do it like that. And you'll see when I'm tuning, I'll often just use my fingers like that. Okay, so when you've got a bit of slack in the tension, let's take this off. Have our A string coming off. There we go, and you can see that it's a little bit thinner, or maybe you can't see so much, but you can feel that it's a little bit thinner. Okay, just do it with my hand. So yeah, it doesn't take too long. Once it's slack, then do sort of unthread. So like I say, a little bit fiddly. It tends to be, unless you're snapping a string sort of when you're putting your new set on, like if it snaps just in general wear and tear, it's probably a sign that you need to replace all of the strings anyway. But yeah, the school I just taught in today has some very, very old guitars that haven't been restrung for many years, and you can see the kind of like the corrosion, perhaps. Yeah, it's meant to be all uniform. We'll see when we get some new strings out. Okay, I'm going to do with a cutting method on these strings. So the cutting method would be where you take some scissors or pliers and do that. The disadvantage of that is it's a little bit sudden, but it should be fine. And particularly on the upper strings or the thinner strings, you're not really going to get much problem there. So let's take these out here. I've got the so as you can see, that was just kind of quicker, so it's a way to do it quickly. And if I put it down here, you can see when we get to putting these top strings on, there are a few different kind of ways to do it. I've kind of experimented a while with these because they go out of tune a little bit easier. So often people might sort of thread it through and then do like a little sort of knot, which I will show you the way that I found works the best when we're restringing it in a minute. But yeah, you can see this takes a little bit of time just kind of getting all of the strings off. I encourage you not to be impatient. Just get them all off nice and safely. Okay, and yeah, maybe I'll try and show you that top machine head's got like a little tie in it, and I'll endeavour to do that when we get to restringing it. So now you've got a nice kind of guitar with no strings on it. Still got our stickers. Keep those stickers on for the kid that's going to use that next. But yeah, I will give it a bit of a clean. So the clean fast fret, like I say, you can kind of go across the frets like that. You can possibly see, or I can certainly see from where I am, the kind of the gloss from where it's been before. And even if you kind of keep your hands really nice and clean, you will still get some dirt build up. So it's really worth giving it a good clean while you've got that opportunity without the strings on. That's really, really useful time to do it. And I'm going to be mindful of these stickers because I want those stickers to stay. And also around sort of the machine heads, sort of round the nut at the top, there's quite a bit of dust. You can clean it when it's got strings on as well, so I'm not saying this is the only time you should clean your guitar. And a duster would be good. Please don't use water. Water's not going to be great, although a tiny bit of water shouldn't damage it. But that's why I'm using this sort of oily fast fret. And okay, I think we're pretty much there. So that's looking good. Nice. So we have a kind of a clean guitar ready to be restrung. Okay, so in terms of what strings you need, I've got a set here. These were bought online, but it's very good to go into a guitar shop and to have a little look round. There's a few on Cowley Road in Oxford where I live, but especially if you've got a kid that's never been to a guitar shop, it's a good way to go into a guitar shop and you're still buying something. So you're buying something, you're not buying a whole guitar, but you can have a look at the guitars and then maybe buy a set of strings. But these are nylon strings. These say normal tension, so generally, yeah, sort of the medium range of tension would be good. I would say I'm not that particular on makes of strings, and some people really are, but yeah, you kind of get what you pay for a little bit in terms of the tone. But if you're looking for around £5, that's good. You can sometimes get cheaper sets online, or if you get sort of a 3 for 2 sort of deal. But around £5 is probably what you're looking for in a set of nylon strings. So these ones have the name of the string on. So first, second. And that's kind of helpful. Can you see it on the background? You just have to trust me. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. if you know that the sixth string is the fat string, which goes at the top of your guitar. So let's start with the sixth string, which is an E string. So you can see there that says sixth string. Sometimes they say E, sometimes it has the kind of a number, which is the gauge, sort of how thick it is. And if we get this string out, just put that down there, you can see it's sort of nice and shiny all the way round. It hasn't got sort of these blemishes from corrosion of your fingers. It's sort of nice like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie a little knot sort of at the bridge, and then we're going to sort of thread it through. So if we go, the way I would do it is through like that, and then let me just remember, round and round again, and then pull it like that. Okay, so I will do that on every string, so I'm not going to do that lots of times. This little bit there should be nice and neatly out of the way. I've seen some people kind of get very particular about, a bit like plaiting. You can kind of put them inside the next string and stuff. You can do that if you want. If you do too many turns there, it kind of gets a bit clumpy, and if you don't do enough turns there, it doesn't hold as well. So what I just did there, which was sort of 2 turns and then pull it, is what I found works really well. It's a similar sort of process the other side. So let me just make sure you can see enough. So we're going to go sort of through, and then probably round the best part of once round, and then through the hole. So I'll just show you that from another angle. So we've gone through and then round and then through the hole. The reason to go round it once before is that we want some slack. So we want it to kind of go round maybe 2 or possibly 3 times before it holds tension. We don't want it to be as tight as possible, because then it's not going to have anything to kind of grip onto. And I'll show you that. In fact, let's tune this string first of all. So I need to make sure we're going the right way round. So oh yeah, we're kind of going round and over and then round, and that means you'll be turning it this way. I always say to my kids, or all of my students, just to use their ears in terms of tuning. So if it's been strung the wrong way, you soon find out, because it goes the opposite way. But you can see here we are turning, and it should hopefully be fairly neat, and it's sort of like gripping a few more. So we've got a note already, and this will keep kind of flicking round. So I would say that's sort of 3 times round, and it's almost at tension. That's sort of perfect, really. If it's a lot more, again, sometimes it gets a bit clumpy. That's not a massive problem, but it's not ideal. But if it hasn't got enough, if it's only got sort of once round, there's a danger it might slip back. So, and don't massively tune it now. Get it to a bit of tension, and that's good enough. Okay, let's try another string, and then I'll go over it again. You can see that the kind of the tension there has got a little bit tighter as well. But let's do another string, because I think it's basically, the more you do it, the more it'll make sense. So let's get your A string out, the 5th string. Okay. And when you're doing this yourself, if you're ever unsure what the string is, just get them both out, and then look at them next to each other, because you can see, or you can feel, the slightly kind of thinner second string, or sort of so the A string compared to the E string. And we're going to do this tying of the knot again. So we're going to go through like that. We're going to go round and then round twice, I think. And then, like I say, a bit like tying a shoelace. Okay, And don't worry, don't worry too much. And if you are replacing your strings regularly, sort of every year or more, you'll have many opportunities to do this. So if it, turns out, oh, you've got a bit extra there by mistake, don't worry. That's, it's not the end of the world. And, it might not look as neat one time, but then, next time you can try a little bit better. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Sorry, I'm trying to get your view. So okay, so we're going to go, what did I say, round. So we're always going kind of past the hole first, and I would say round at least once, but probably once is enough. And what I'm doing is sort of I'm going through the hole with a bit of slack. So I'm not pulling it tight, I'm pulling it so it's sort of fairly loose, but probably a bit more than that. Okay, so kind of fairly loose. And then what's going to happen is that tension is going to wind up. I'm going to use this tuning device. You can see, hopefully, going round, that flings round. And we've already got a bit of tension. So that's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that one as well. So we're not worrying about tension yet. I forgot to say on this video, but we always start with the lowest strings. One reason I think is because they're harder to snap. So there's less to sort of go wrong. And by the time you get to the thin strings and the E string, you hopefully know what you're doing a little bit better. The other reason is that there's tension in the whole neck. So each string will put tension on the whole neck of the guitar. It's not just each one string being alone, they all kind of work together a little bit. So it's quite good to have all of the tension being built up, and then you're putting the last string on. But like I say, we're not actually putting it massively at tension. We're just sort of getting kind of a bit of tension on at this point. Okay, so this is the D string, string 4. Okay, so as we've done before, we're going to go through the hole and a little bit fiddly. So we're going to go round the back and then up, through and then through again, hold the end and then tie it a bit like a knot. And then, like I say, I'm not really that fussed about threading them. I don't really mind that, if I'm honest, but some people do, do all sorts of like threading that underneath there, but I don't know that it needs it really. And this is a 3/4 size guitar, so I've got a bit of extra length actually to play with. So if this was a full size guitar, I'd have less of this sort of dangling around, but it's the same set of strings really. You just have a bit of extra length. Okay, so important to keep that extra length while you're stringing it. So we're going over the top and then through again, and then the thinner strings tend to, let's go around twice. So the thinner strings tend to need a little bit more to grip onto. So I'm kind of just basically going round again before I go through the hole, like so. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's fine. And sometimes, so I'll tighten it with my fingers this time, you can see that's loose and then it kind of gradually gets tighter. You can see it turning around now. Some people get a little bit funny about this bit here, sort of being a bit sort of neat or chaotic. So if it overlaps, you can kind of see where it's 2 or 3 times, and you can see the first one I put on is extremely neat. The second one, there's little gaps, and then the third one isn't very neat because I did it quite a rush. It tends to be, it'll just settle and it's not that important. But if you want to make it a bit neater like that second one, I could just loosen it a bit and then sort of just adjust it and then tighten it, and you can see now that's super neat. And that top one, because I did the extra turn might just need a little bit more help. There we go, sorted already. The nut here has little grooves, so you can see that that's just flicked over to it'd be the 5th slot, and I'm going to put it on the 4th slot. So just be aware of that as well. There we go. So we've got all of our sort of lower 3 strings, and you can see that looks quite neat as well. If there's a sort of extra bit of hole in there, you might just need to sort of again sort of adjust it and sort of pull it a bit, and then it'll kind of like even its way out. Okay, right, let's do one of the thinner ones. So you can see these strings 1, 2 and 3 are all sort of nylon, and they don't have the sort of metal wound around it, so these are less likely, in fact, to kind of get old and corrode with your sweat of your fingers, but they still do need replacing. And yeah, I mean, if you were sort of strict about it, you could replace the other 3 and not these 3 so often, but you might as well do the whole set, I think. So this is the G string. Okay, and can you see the difference of material? So one of the most common things is that I get asked is what type of strings to get. So these are nylon strings, and the beginners that I teach certainly will all start on nylon strings because it's a little bit softer for your fingers. As you get a little bit more used to it, you can go on to steel strings, and even if you're staying on acoustic guitars or electric guitars, this is quite a nice way to start. So let's just remind you of going round again. Okay, and then pulling it tight. There's enough through it, but if there was less than that, I probably would do it again. And in fact, if I did do it again, that would be fine. But yeah, just make sure you've got a little bit of that, otherwise it might come out. And if it did come out, it wouldn't be the end of the world again, especially if you've not cut your string, because if the string comes off, you can just put it on again. But once you cut it, it does sort of restrict what you can do. This string should be fine in terms of what I'm doing, going round and then through and then put in the tension. But these thinner strings do have a tendency of not keeping their tune as much. So let's use our device as we've got it. Why not? So that's going to help. Also a slightly easier sort of motion to go round and round. Okay. Sometimes, especially with second-hand guitars or older guitars, these machine heads might be kind of clunky. You might have one that's lost its its little plastic bit, so you might have to use some pliers to do it. It still can be done though. And if you're in doubt and you need proper repairs, then do take it to a guitar shop, and they can normally advise you or book it in for a sort of service, so to speak. Okay, so we've now got all of those strings done. Just push that across. So now we're on to our 2 thinnest strings, which are, I think, a little bit more problematic on acoustic guitars. So I'll just show you what I might do with them to stop that problem. How come that one didn't open? There we go. So that is pretty thin, you can see. So same idea here. So we're going to go through through the hole, if I can find it. There we go. I'd probably say leave a little bit more length, or maybe even sort of go round again. So there we go. So I've left a little bit more excess there, partly as I've got it, but you really don't want that string to be kind of unraveling there, nor do any string really, but these ones are harder to fit on. So what I would do with this one is I would go same idea initially, so going round, And then what I might do is, let me just sort myself out and then I'll explain it. So I'm going to go in and then sort of back within it. So you're kind of going in and then back again, and then sort of holding this sort of loop. Hopefully you can see a loop there. And then I'm kind of pulling through the loop, and then I'm going through the loop. Okay. And I'll do it on the other string as well, so you get another chance to see it. But the reason I've done that, and don't worry too much if you can't do that process, is that it should hold its tension better. So I've seen various different ways of sort of doing your top strings. Can we see there? It's got kind of a little loop. So I've basically gone sort of in the hole and come out again to make a loop, and then I've gone through the loop, which kind of is a little bit like a knot. Okay, and then I'm tightening it up. So let's use my tuner again. So and it'll still slip, which is normal, but I found that just sort of holds the tension a little bit better than if you have going round and round and round and round the sort of the top there. It kind of sometimes slips a little bit just on those top strings. It doesn't seem to slip on the fatter strings, but that's what I've found, and other guitarists I've spoken to have found that too. Right, let's use the scissors as I've got them for this last E string. So I will go over that again with this string, so don't worry. And so I think you've probably got the hang of attaching it at the bridge. So over here, now we've got our super thin string. So this one's more like hair, really. So, and we're going through the hole. Where's the hole? There we go. And then again, like I say, because it's thin, you can kind of go around maybe twice this time, and make sure you've got enough slack. Okay, so as you did with the other strings, but just very important on those last strings. And again, so with the tightening on here, we might want to go round sort of maybe a couple of times and then do that little knot that I was talking about on the second string. So maybe I'll go round 1.5 times and then go through. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. In fact, at that point it's the same as the other strings, but then I'm going to go back through and keep hold of a loop. So I'm keeping hold of a loop, and then that loop I'm going to tuck the end through and then sort of pull it to make a kind of a bit like a knot. And that, like I say, is what I've found helps. There are a few different ways actually of tightening that on, and you could just not do that, and then you can see what happens if you if you're lucky. It might not slip, but I often find that tying a knot is quite important on those top two strings. So there we go. Okay, so now we have a restrung guitar, but none of it is in tune, which we know, and we have lots of these sort of end bits, especially on a 3/4 size guitar. So the next stage would be to put it roughly in tune. So we're not looking to get it super in tune, we're just going to get it to a near tension. So you could use a tuner if you want. I'm going to use the piano. What you'll hear is that it goes out of tune very quickly. So as I explained in the other video, you're kind of like pulling this string, and then it's sort of like it's kind of pulling back to go to where it was. It's like loose tension, and then you have to kind of pull it again and then it's going to go back a little bit. And the more you do that, the more likely it is to kind of hold its tension. But even when a guitar's had its strings on for a long time, it will go out of tune. So you know, you're just kind of like encouraging it. See, it's gone out already just in talking to you for a few seconds. Okay, so let's see if we can tune the others. I might use this a little bit. Sometimes it makes a few creaks and clunks. If you're unsure, sort of if you've tightened it too much or whatever, just leave it and come back to it. So I mean, tune the other strings and then come back to that one, because sometimes there's, you know, a little clunk or something, and it kind of solves itself. So you can see if I go back to the E, it's dropped like almost a whole tone. So the next one, D. You can also feel. So if I'm feeling, it feels like, you know, more at tension, and then I slow down, and then I think, oh, is that too high? I don't know. So I have to check. Needs to be a bit higher. But if I was unsure, I could just go to the other ones, because I can come back and do it again. See, I can tell that is nowhere near the tension that it needs to be. So I know that there's some tuning, some tightening. Takes a little bit of work, doesn't it? And like I say, a little bit of creaks, especially if it's an old second-hand guitar or it's been around for a while. So getting it roughly tense is good, and then sometimes I use the string below just to see if it feels sort of similar. So these top ones are the ones, like I say, they slip, and then E. So I've got to go up a fifth. I think I'll be a little bit more, take a little bit more time. We've got to a third. Sometimes I like doing the fine tuning with just my fingers, because this does detach you a little bit from the feeling of the string. Okay, nowhere near in tune, but if I now do a bit of playing and just twanging the strings, as weird as that sounds. Oop, sorry. That distorted a little bit, but yeah, so it's like I explained on the other video, you're kind of like pulling the string, and then you're giving like a wobble, and then it will go back kind of looser, but then you can kind of pull it again, and hopefully then it maintains the tension a little bit better. So let's tune it a little bit more accurately now. So most of them were better that time, but there's a few that definitely slipped. That D string. And now we're into what's called fine tuning. So you can feel we're almost in tune now. Still that D string. But rather than necessarily tuning all the time, the most important thing at this point would be to just leave it for a bit. So it's holding its tension, it's getting used to it. Give your strings sort of a pull, a bit of a strum. Sorry, it's distorting a little bit when I do that, but just so they're used to being kind of pulled around a bit. You can also check that it's sort of nicely lined up. I think I'm pretty happy with all of those actually, and they look fine. The other thing just to mention is to not clip these for a good few days, I would say. So you can tie them up if you want to, if they're annoying. You can certainly play your guitar while it's settling, but you don't want to cut this, especially not too short as well, while it's settling, because you might need that extra length to sort of adjust at a later point. Let's do one final tune and then I'll say goodbye. It gives you an idea, and it's normal for the strings to pull back, but we are, so yeah, that would probably be enough for today, and then I'd maybe do it again tomorrow, and then in a couple of days I would clip it off and that would be finished. But yeah, that's a nicely restrung sort of classical guitar, 3/4 size. I hope you found that video useful. Please do click subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye bye.